Why is having 5-year plans, 10-year plans, and everything in between so crucial? Aside from the fact that when you have a plan together, it's easier to deal with complications or, just different things that might deter you from that path and help you stay focused and achieving your goals. Aside from all that, I want to talk about after the plan has come to fruition. So think about 5 years ago, where you were at and the steps that you were taking to get to where you are now. And then think about 10 years before that, 5 more years before that, which would be 10 years since the present. And that's the part that I think not too many people really focus on. Because, when you talk about plan, makes sense, you're thinking about what's going to happen in the future, but having that plan gives you a point of reference. And that part can be extremely powerful because, sounds cliche, but history and time have just a weird way of repeating themselves. People kind of just have, a tendency to repeat the same habits, myself included. And that's kind of where I'm coming out for this video, because when I look at myself 10 years ago, I was going through a lot of the same things that I'm going through this year. And what that tells me is that I'm heading for a period of great transition in my life. And having that point of reference helps me to connect the dots and be better prepared for the hardships that are about to happen if this pattern does repeat. So 10 years ago, I had literally 10 years ago from this point would be, that would be like between my first and second semester at San Jose State University. And I guess, give or take a few months, basically what happened all those years ago was, I had been struggling through a relationship, or the ending of a relationship that I just wasn't mature enough to handle the end of it, and had a very unhealthy outlook on it, and just wasn't really willing to let go, which was definitely terrible on my part. It just was not a good situation. I can't blame the person, I can only blame myself. But I don't really want to blame anybody too much. Point of the matter is just that I was in a bad situation as far as that's concerned, the relationship part. And I just didn't know how to handle it at the time. Just heartbroken and stuff. And I find myself in a similar predicament right now, where the relationship that I'm currently in is just not really in the healthiest state. It's not really in the best place it's ever been. And relationships sure are full of ups and downs, but this one in particular right now, like this down in particular, seems like something that I probably just completely fucked up to the point where it's going to be very hard to recover. It might not even be worth recovering, because I have this nagging feeling that I've pushed her over the edge, and I'm not sure that I really have the chance to redeem myself and repair that. That being said, if I do have that chance, there's a lot to work on, but that's also going to have a lot to do with me overcoming my own insecurities. Anyhow, aside from that, there was a lot of friendships that I lost during this time. A lot of new friends who I basically ruined those friendships. And as mad as I was at that time, realistically, it kind of just does fall on me. Like, I don't really know what was going through those dudes' heads. And there's no way for me to ever figure that out. And there's probably no use in me ever knowing that. It's probably better that I don't, so that I can just hold myself accountable for the things that I can influence. And point I'm just trying to make is that I'm kind of going through a similar thing right now where I made a pretty decent amount of new friends who I thought were good friends. And they probably could have been good friends if it wasn't for me kind of tarnishing those relationships, those friendships. And the way that I tarnished those is actually quite similar to the way that I tarnished them in the past, which is surprising. It's kind of eerie in a way. It's like one of those feelings you get when you think about the term of cosmic irony, the way that karma works, or not necessarily karma, but just a cyclical passage of time and history repeating itself. Like I said, people repeating the same habits. But this time, one thing that I know is that I'm better equipped to handle it, because before, whereas I fell into a really deep depression and kind of overcompensated over the next few years following that experience, I think that this time will be different because I'm just better equipped. I have more wisdom. I also have more experience to reflect on. Being able to see the steps that I had made back then, and that was without much intention, versus the steps that I could take now with intention. My new steps, these current steps, should be way more powerful and be able to correct that path maybe not much quicker. Maybe I am bound for the next 1 to 2 years being some of the downest I've ever been, because that's what it was back in like 2012, 2013. So now we're heading here into 22 and 23, and yeah, maybe, who knows? I'm not going to worry too much about that, but I'm just going to focus on the fact that a lot of good came after that. And if things are worse now than they were 10 years ago, then when the rebound happens, they should be that much better, if not even more, just because I have this perspective that's able to prevent me from falling into that pit. Maybe as far as my actions, when I was in like some altered states, were worse than the actions that I took in my altered states 10 years ago. One thing that I could say for sure is that the feeling right now is, I don't want to say easier to deal with, but I feel like I'm just gaining a lot more from it in terms of my focus and thinking about figuring out what I need to do to sort of correct it. So 10 years ago, I wanted to bring it back even further than that. I want to go back 20 years ago, 2001. I had also lost a bunch of friends at that time, and I was only 11 years old at that time. But again, it's just ironic. So it wasn't by my own doing that I lost all those friends. It was because my family moved to a different city. But the fact of the matter is that I still lost all those friends. And 10 years later, same thing happened. I made a bunch of friends and lost them in a relatively short span of time, right? I'm talking about, just in the past 1 to 2 years. And I'm not sure that things can ever really be the same. And in a way, I don't really want them to. I don't really care if they do. One other thing when it comes to friends and the people you keep around you, I try to tell myself, and maybe somebody out there needs to hear this, is there was a time when you were happy and you were doing just fine without them in your life. So if things go bad and there's no reconciliation, whether or not it was your fault, which in this case it was my fault. I'm humble enough to admit that. But even if it wasn't, because there's also some other people, acquaintances, I won't even call them friends, that kind of fell off, which I still don't know the reason why, because some people just don't like to confront issues and talk about them. But anyhow, there was a point in your life, there was a point in my life where I didn't even know these people even existed. I didn't even, there was no way I could even have imagined who they were, what their names were, what they looked like, what kind of mindset they had, what kind of things, you know. And so if they were to leave my life, why is that such a bad thing? That's not going to ruin me. I could be happy again without them. Same thing should go for everybody out there watching this, because I know sometimes it's really tough. I mean, I didn't really think about it this way 10 years ago, and that's probably one of the things that contributed to the kind of downward spiral I went in regarding depression and whatnot, and just kind of continuing very destructive habits. And yeah, you just got to remember not to hold those people accountable. I guess not accountable, but to not to hold it against those people, because at the end of the day, we all do just have one common goal, which is to make life better for ourselves and the people that we really truly care about. And maybe I just hadn't got to the point with these people to really truly care about me. So it's just easy for them to just kind of disregard me and wait for the situation we're in to dissipate so that we can all move on, which is similar to what happens even with good friends, because, well, you can see in one of my previous videos, you know, I talk about how you shouldn't be mad at your old friends because everybody's just moving on. It's just part of life. You can't hold it against them. Too many people get salty. Too many people have a bunch of resentment. Too many people have, like, oh, fuck that person or whatever. And it's like, dude, that was your homie back then. Why are you so mad? It's like, oh, they never hit me back up. It's like, well, dude, you know, life happens. So anyways, aside from that, though, let me get back onto the topic of, you know, again, the situation that I'm in, where I feel like a lot of things are about to be lost in terms of, you know, my social status or my social circle. And, you know, at the end of the day, man, it probably doesn't even really matter as much as it sometimes feels in that moment, in those moments of realization where everything just kind of crashes down on you like a big wave. It may seem overwhelming for a little bit, but if you don't have the mental fortitude to realize how insignificant these things really are, then it can become crippling and destroy you. But I'm not going to let that happen this time. And it's going to require a lot of sacrifice. I don't get invited places anymore. I never get invited out. But everyone else around me is living it up. But that's fine, because this gives me a lot of time to focus down on the things that really matter for me and my family in the future, and whoever else between now and then wants to get involved with it, so that when the up again happens, it's just going to be that much better. You know, stop with the FOMO. You're not really missing out on much. And, ooh, hang on. Let me show you my uncle's cat, actually. He's a little Bengal cat. Hey, dude. What you doing? Meow. Ow. Anyways, yeah. You know, even before this year, because like right now I'm literally looking back, like literally exactly 10 years ago, but back in July 2020 when my mom passed away, actually no, I'm sorry, before that, when basically she lost custody of my brother, it was kind of like one of those wake up calls where same thing, like history repeating itself, because when I was my brother's age at that time, which he was 12 when she lost custody of him, and around that time when I was his age, something very, very similar happened. It was almost eerie. It was almost like, again, but this time not to me, but to someone even more important. At least to me, my little brother. It was just weird. But that's a lesson. I mean, history repeats itself. It's, we have this very linear we have this very linear perception of time, but a lot of ancient societies had a cyclical perspective of it, and I think maybe we've lost touch of that because just the way that our society currently functions, but maybe in a different time, they had the opportunity and the perspective to really reflect on the repetition of certain things and realize that things do come back around. Might not be karma per se, maybe it's something related to karma. Not to say that anybody deserves bad because of what they did, because I feel like if you did something bad and you don't do anything to have any sort of redemption or remorse, then you maybe, well, it's not my place to say whether you deserve it or not. I guess that's up to the cosmos, to the one, to God, or whatever you believe. So anyways, yeah, man, I don't know. Just have this nagging feeling in the back of my head that, I push things so far to the edge. Maybe I pushed it over the edge without even realizing it. But maybe there's some codependency going on where it's hard to let go. And whatever. If I, like I said, like 10 years ago, going through that shit, relationship-wise, I mean, I was basically fucking tossed to the curb. And maybe this time, something worse might happen. I don't know. And I don't even want to think about that. But if it were to happen, and I were to find out about something, I feel like I'm at a point where I could just kind of let it go, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really fucking matter. And if that's how people want to choose to react, I guess I can't really blame them. I can only blame myself for eliciting or soliciting or whatever the word is, for basically being deserving of that type of consequence, because I really wasn't thinking about consequences. I try to, but sometimes you just have a mental slip. And anyhow, just think about that when you're thinking about, where you want to be in the future, making your 5 and 10 years plan. Of course, there's always the aspect of it being able to be like a roadmap so that you can't get deterred. Kind of think about it like a laying down the railroad so that you never fall off track. But also realize you're getting more value than it. You're getting more value out of it than just that. You're also getting the value of always having points of reference so you can look back, reflect, and when the bad things happen, because life is always going to have some bad, some good, ups and downs. So when you're in those down moments, as time goes on, as you get older, into the future, as those bad moments happen, you have a better perspective on how to better handle that and keep yourself from spiraling, and keep yourself motivated. All right, y'all. Peace.